This is an early prototype of a turn-based tactics RPG, tentatively titled Temple Tactics. In this game, you lead up to 6 units into combat against armies 2 to 3 times your size. The player will have access to a variety of units they can deploy on any given map, so can customize their strategy based on the map's layout or objective. As with other games in the genre, the player may spend prolonged durations thinking about their next action. As such, the background footage has been edited for time. All assets are work in progress. Turns are broken up into player phase and enemy phase. During their own phase, each unit can attack and move once each, in any order. The ability to move after attacking is important, as certain attacks are designated as heavy attacks, denoted by an H in the UI, which can only be used before moving your character. Most attacks have a cooldown, and some can carry multiple charges. This encourages the player to think about where an attack is used best, creates necessary variety in attack selection, and provides an additional balance lever for the designer. Note that attacks are not limited just to damaging abilities. All this also applies to buffs, debuffs, and healing. All attacks have friendly fire, and it is possible to buff or heal enemies, making positioning important. Additionally, targets further from an attack's epicenter take less damage or healing and have an increased chance to dodge. Buffs and healing cannot miss. All damaging attacks and debuffs can be counterattacked. For area of effect attacks with multiple targets, at most one target can choose to counterattack. This counterattack can likewise have AoE and will always be centered on the attacker. Damaging abilities are classified by element: earth, fire, water, wind, and physical. Elemental effectiveness is based on the terrain a target is standing on, affecting both hit rate and damage dealt. More importantly, by targeting an enemy with an element their current terrain is weak to, their counterattack will be suppressed. Preventing counterattacks is the true value of targeting weaknesses, and makes both the elements a character has access to and the terrain they're standing on constant considerations during combat. To aid the player with identifying enemy threat ranges when moving their characters, the UI will display a warning indicator above enemies' heads. A white single exclamation point means the selected tile is in attack range. A darkened single exclamation point means the tile is in range of debuffs only. And double exclamation points means the tile can be suppressed. Rounding out the positional mechanics in the game, we have supports. When placing 2 allied units in box range, that is, adjacent or at a diagonal to each other, those units will support each other in combat. This gives bonuses to hit rate, critical rate, and evasion. Units will receive a large bonus for their first support, and smaller bonuses for their second and third. There is no additional bonus for having 4 or more units supporting an ally. This mechanic serves as a foil for area of effect. Being hit by AoE is the risk for positioning units in close proximity to each other, while support bonuses are the reward. As a consequence of combat, units will gain tension. Tension is functionally a replacement for a leveling system, allowing for character growth within maps, but is not carried over between them. At specific intervals, a character's tension level will increase, dramatically boosting all stats. Characters gain tension from any combat action, including killing an enemy, hitting, getting hit, missing, or dodging. Tension is also awarded when an ally is killed or an ally kills an enemy. Generally speaking, more tension is awarded for negative actions, like missing or getting hit, than for positive actions, like hitting a foe. But killing enemies remains the exception, which grants significantly more tension than any other action. To prevent the player from snowballing out of control, next most tension is awarded for allied deaths, which ensures the opposing army never falls too far behind. Additionally, tension gain is modified based on the level difference of the attacker and defender, favoring the lower level character. As the last universal mechanic of note, bursts give units access to various powerful effects, gated by killing enemies or passing the unit's turn. Any player unit can expend 1 burst stock to get an extra move, which re-enables heavy attacks, a guaranteed critical hit, or a guaranteed evade for 1 attack. Enemies are restricted to only using a single type of burst each, which depends on their class and is prominently displayed by their health bar. All units start with 1 burst, and gain another upon killing one or more enemies. If you have no burst stocks remaining, you can also gain 1 burst if you end your turn without attacking. A character can hold no more than 2 bursts at a time. Finally, summons are a strictly player-sided mechanic and act as a sort of super move. The summon gauge fills by attacking and slowly over time. Attacks with longer cooldowns grant more summon gauge. When the summon gauge is full, a player unit can expend it to perform a powerful self-targeted AoE attack which cannot be countered, damaging enemies and instead buffing allies. Summons are the only attacks in the game that discriminate based on the target's faction. Each element has an associated summon, each with different buffs. Physical reduces cooldowns. Earth grants a temporary barrier, reducing incoming damage and negating incoming status effects. Fire increases the damage dealt on your next attack. Water heals and removes debuffs. Wind greatly increases movement for 1 move and increases both hit and critical rates for 1 attack after moving. A character can only use summons of elements that they naturally have access to. While I was planning to end the video there, there's still footage remaining, so I'd like to take some time to talk about buffs and debuffs. I must reiterate that all details are subject to change, though I've attempted to speak in the general wherever possible. Buffs can be generally split into 2 main types: small AoE effects and large self-targeted effects. Different buffs that affect the same stat will stack additively, such as a small attack buff and a large attack buff, while buffs of the exact same type, such as 2 small attack buffs, will not stack and will instead refresh the duration if reapplied. Buffs exist for all main stats and usually increase 1 or more stats by a percentage. Movement and chance-based stats, that is hit, evade, critical, and critical evade, increase by a flat amount instead. Most buffs last a fixed number of turns, counting from the phase on which they were applied. Some effects, including all movement buffs, last for a certain number of uses instead. Debuffs take the form of status effects. At the time of this recording, there are 6 debuffs in the game: Impair, Vulnerable, Fatigue, Bind, Sleep, and Poison. With the exception of Sleep and Bind, all debuffs last for 3 turns. Impair reduces all chance-based stats by a flat amount. Vulnerable reduces the defense and magic defense of the target by a percentage. This stacks multiplicatively with any buff effects they may have. Fatigue reduces attack and magic attack by a percentage. Bind greatly reduces the target's movement and evade for 1 turn. Sleep prevents the target from acting for 1 turn and reduces their evade and critical evade. This status is removed prematurely if the target is hit. Poison inflicts a percentage of the target's current health at the end of their phase, decreasing over the duration. Poison deserves special attention here. The choice to consume current health was not made lightly. At time of this recording, action economy in Temple Tactics is balanced around the philosophy that it should take 2 to 3 actions to kill a unit, where the player has access to up to 6 actions per turn. To align with these ideals, Poison needs to deal substantial damage on the very first tick, setting up a target to be eliminated on the following turn. In practice, this is about 30% max health. But if poison targets took max health damage every turn, it would inevitably result in players poisoning foes, then running away to avoid combat, which is not very interesting gameplay. By making it current health instead, the effect can deal meaningful damage, but still require a subsequent action to deliver the finishing blow. Furthermore, current health damage increases poison's strategic value, as it will be most effective against undamaged foes. Taking at end of phase serves 2 purposes as well. It gives the player adequate time to respond to and cleanse the debuff, without having to spend one of their limited healing charges. And it ensures that if it is not cleansed, then an afflicted target will always be below max health on the following turn. That concludes the commentary, and I'd like to thank you for watching up to this point. As a solo dev, progress can be slow, but I hope you will check out Temple Tactics when it eventually releases. There's about a minute of remaining footage, which I'll let play in the background for those that are interested.